3, 2, 1, run.
All right, bless the Lord. I'm glad you joined with us again today as we continue our study of Revelation. An exciting book, actually. It is for me. I hope it is for you. There's a lot of interesting things that's taking place on it, and it certainly is an eye-opener when you kind of understand where some of it came from. And so I think it's a marvelous thing that we study the book of Revelation, and I pray tonight that God opens not only my heart and my mind, but yours too as we continue studying these things. Now we're going to do something a little bit different today. We will pick it up and finish off chapter 13 later, but what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go into some biblical history and regular history and stuff first, because it's important to tie all this together. If you understand other prophecies, you understand the history, things that took place. So I'm going to be talking about some of this stuff today. So I think, first of all, I'm going to start off with Daniel chapter 2. So if you got your Bibles, turn to Daniel 2. Daniel 2. Yeah. I think you're going to see as we talk about Daniel 2 and Daniel 7 and Daniel 8, the stories are very similar alike. The only thing is that sometimes you get a little bit more information on each one about the last day empires. This is why this is kind of important, that we look at the last days empires. Even though all these Daniel stories kind of say the same, there's just a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit different here and there, and those are important concepts to understand so we can fully understand what is going to go on in the last days. Who's doing what? Who's on first? Who's on second? And all that kind of stuff. You know, that's kind of important to know. Who's up to bat? What's the count? You know, what's the score? Even more important. So all these things are important for us to understand. All these criteria. So we're going to start off back up a little bit and cover some things in Daniel that may even more readily explain what we've been talking about in Revelation 13 and eventually even Revelation 17 that needs some more explanation to it. So we're going to start off with Daniel 2 right now. And even Daniel 2 is not that big to talk about, but we're going to go talk about it. All right, so if you remember, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had a dream and was frightened by his dream. And so Daniel said he could interpret it. And Nebuchadnezzar said, great. And so Daniel went and prayed, and the Lord showed him what the interpretation of it was. So we begin with Daniel 2, verse 31. It says, you, O king, saw and behold a great image. So this is, you got to understand here, the king didn't tell Daniel anything. He just said, I want to know what it was that I saw. Because the other magicians and sorcerers of Nebuchadnezzar says, yes, just tell us your dream and we'll tell you the interpretation of it. And Nebuchadnezzar went, no, you tell me the dream. If you're worth your salt, you tell me the dream. And so he kind of put them in a bad way. Matter of fact, when they couldn't do it, he was going to kill them all. And then they all cried out. And then Daniel says, I'll ask God. He'll show me the dream. Don't fret it out. Daniel wasn't really part of that group, but he felt sorry for him. And said, I'll ask God to show me the dream so your life will be spared. So this is where we begin right here when Daniel comes back before Nebuchadnezzar in verse 31. It says, you, O king, saw, behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before you, and the form thereof was terrible. This image head was of fine gold, and his breasts and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part clay and part iron. And you saw that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image on his feet that were made of iron and clay, and broke them into pieces. Then was the iron and the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and become like chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. All right, so what Daniel is explaining here, that this image or this thing, a statue that Nebuchadnezzar was seeing, he was telling Nebuchadnezzar what he saw, even though Nebuchadnezzar never explained it to him. You saw this head of gold on this statue. And he goes on to say, that is you, Nebuchadnezzar. You are the head of gold. He goes on and explains that later on here, beginning with chapter 30 or verse 36 of the same chapter. So he said, you are the head of gold. The next thing you saw was that your breasts and arms were of silver. And then you saw arms, or your belly and thighs of brass. And then your legs were of iron, the feet were iron and clay. Now, these are all represented empires that were coming. And that's what we're going to see in these other Daniel stories too. So basically went on to say, you are the head of gold, Nebuchadnezzar. And verse 39, and after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to you, and then a third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. So the third kingdom of brass was the really big one. Really big kingdom. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdue all things, as iron that breaks all these, it shall break in pieces and bruise. And whereas you saw the feet and toes, part potter's clay and part iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay. And the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. So, what we begin to learn here is what these kingdoms are. So, the gold was the Babylonian Empire. That's what it's saying. The silver was the next empire, which was the Medes and the Persians. That's why it was 2 arms and a breast, Medes and Persians. Next one was the belly and thighs of brass, which was Alexander the Great. The Greek Empire came next. Then the legs of iron, and then the feet part iron and clay. As we're going to see in some of these other stories, that a lot of people say, well, the legs of iron is Rome. Well, I'm going to show you it's not. And this is what you need to pay close attention to. It's not Rome. And we're going to see all these pieces and figure it out. Then the kingdom that comes with the 10 toes of iron and clay, a mixture of iron and clay, and the significance of that phrase itself is the word Arab. Arab means mixture, means mix. So when they see 10 toes mixed of iron and clay, it's talking about the Ottoman Empire, the Islamic Empire, revived in the last days. So it brings you back to the legs of iron, and the legs of iron actually will be the Ottoman Empire in its first run. But it comes back, and that's where you get the 10 toes concept going on at that time. All right, so let's turn to Daniel 7. Daniel 7. And every one of these, Daniel saw the same kind of vision several times, and he just tells it differently. Chapter 7, verse 1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Verse 2. Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night, behold, the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Some symbolism, when you're talking about a sea like this, it's talking about people. From the people on the earth, the sea of people. This is what it's talking about. Verse 4, and the first was like a lion. So the first beast he saw was a lion. And we're going to see that would be the Babylonian Empire. And it had eagle's wings. Well, the eagle was a symbol of the Babylonian Empire. And I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand upon the feet as a man. And a man's heart was given to it. If you remember the story of Nebuchadnezzar, he was boasting, and God humbled him by turning him into a wild animal. And he was actually out in the field eating grass. So he took this king of Babylon and made him a wild animal, and he had to feed like other animals in the field. So he was definitely humbled. This is what this is talking about. And made to stand upon the feet as a man. Verse 5, behold another beast, the second, like to a bear, and it raised itself up on one side, and had 3 ribs in its mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and they said, thus, rise, devour much flesh. The reason it was on one side is because it was leaning on one side, because there's 2 empires here, but one stronger than the other empire. The Persian Empire was stronger than the Medes, and that's why this bear was leaning on one side. And then they had 3 ribs in the mouth of it. And it's a big debate on what 3 countries the Persians and Medes conquered here, but depending on which scholar you want to listen to. But basically there was 3 other little empires in the area at the time they swallowed up, including like the Babylonians, the Parthians, and stuff like that, that they gobbled up, this empire. To arise and devour much flesh. So the Persian Empire was pretty big, and it did a lot of damage to the world. Then verse 6, and I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given unto it. So this leopard had wings of a bird, had 4 heads, and it had dominion. All right, so if we understand what history said, Alexander the Great was the leopard. He swept over the Medes and Persian Empire with such swiftness, the Persians couldn't figure out what happened to them. Because he literally just charged into them and kept going and run right over the top of them. And so this was Alexander the Great. And at that time, Alexander the Great had the largest empire ever happened in that part of the world. And it said here, it talked about here that he had 4 heads. What happened to Alexander the Great's empire? When he died in Babylon and was buried in Alexandria, Egypt, his kingdom was divided into 4 sections. You had the Macedonian Greece section. You had the Turkey Syria section called the Seleucid. You had the Egyptian Northern Africa section called the Ptolemies, and with poor little Israel right between the Seleucids and Ptolemies all the time. Each side kept conquering Israel. How'd you like to be Israel at that time? You couldn't win for nothing. They were 2 great big empires fighting each other all the time, and you're in the middle. And so you had these 4 empires. Today, those 4 empires today are all Islamic. If you look at those empires today, actually look at every one of these beasts, they're all Islamic today. All these empires point to Islam today. And there's a reason for that. You're going to see that in some of the other visions too. Basically, all these empires are going to come back together as one major force against Israel. So just because Babylon was destroyed by the Medes and Persians, and Alexander the Great destroyed Medes and Persians, doesn't mean that they're not going to resurrect and come back. They are. They're going to resurrect and come back. All these empires are coming back. And it just so happens they're all going to be all Islamic. Every one of them. So what are the odds of that? So it's kind of crazy. So anyway, you go down to verse 4. Oh no, we already talked about verse 5, or verse 6, we already did. Verse 7, and after this, in the night visions, behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, strong exceedingly, It had great iron teeth, and devoured and broke in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and was diverse from all the other beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. So we got a problem here. What was the next empire after Alexander the Great? The Roman Empire. But it said it was diverse from all the other ones, and it had 10 horns. Well, the Roman Empire was nothing but a continuation of the Greek Empire. They even worshiped the same gods. So it wasn't like we have been told that was the rising of the Roman Empire. There's a problem here. So it was exceedingly strong, great iron teeth, devoured and stamped in pieces the residue of the previous empire. And it was diverse from all the other beasts that were before it. Yet we also will learn that all the beasts will come together again. And it had 10 horns. So if the beast that was made out of iron and had 10 horns, and it was supposed to be Rome, what would the 10 horns would represent of the Roman Empire? What would it represent? I mean, I've read stories where people tried to make it 10 Caesars. Well, there was a lot more than 10. But 10 dictators, well, there was more than 10 of them. So what were the 10 horns if it was the Roman Empire? Nobody could ever make it fit Scripture right. So this iron beast that came up, the terrible, dreadful, and terrible beast, exceedingly strong, with great iron teeth, came up, was not the Roman Empire. The Roman empires really were just a continuation of the Greek Empire. Remember what happened to Alexander the Great? He had taken over Israel, but he liked Israel. He did not want to hurt Israel, but he controlled the country. So basically, when Rome rose to power, they just kind of took over where Alexander the Great left off. They didn't come in and conquer Israel. They didn't conquer the leader, the Grecian leader of that country. They didn't do any of those things. They just took over. And so it's not Rome, because it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. So then you look at verse 8. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Wow. So a little horn came up. We've got to pay attention to that one, little horn. But we talk more about the little horn in Revelation even. The little horn. We know that if you look at history, people, scholars say the little horn was Antiochus Epiphanes, the Greek-Syrian king that rose up and ruled Israel for a while. And he would have been a shadow, but that he didn't fulfill all the things of the little horn. He was just a shadow. But he's a good shadow. If you're trying to figure out the Antichrist and the bad guy of the last days, look and see what Antiochus Epiphanes did. And you get an idea about the last days person. So this little horn rose up. Yet we're going to see the little horn even in the book of Revelation. So it's like, all right, who is this little horn? Antiochus was just a shadow of this little horn. So, and he speaks great blasphemous things, the horn. Then you look at verse 9. And I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream came forth from before him. 1,000 and thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I beheld then because of the voice of the great words which the horn spoke. I beheld even until the beast was slain. All right, so the whole beast, it's talking about the whole beast now. Not just the horn, but the whole beast. This is just another clue that the whole beast will return, that represent all those nations will come together, and they'll all be Islamic nations, and they'll all be enemies of Israel, and they will try to wipe out Israel. We'll talk some more about that. And I beheld until the beast was slain, and the body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So it tells you that not all the beasts would be totally destroyed. Then you get to verse 13, and it's on the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him before him. And there was given to him dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him, and his dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom which shall not be destroyed. So it's telling you here that the Messiah's kingdom is what's going to destroy this last beast. Well, that wasn't Rome. See, so the point I'm trying to make is, it's not Rome. And these beasts will still be alive at the coming of the Messiah. So let's go, that was Daniel 7. Let's go to Daniel 8 now. Daniel 8. Starting with verse 3. Then I lifted up mine eyes, and I saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other. And the higher one came up last. And I saw a ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might be able to stand before him. Neither was there any that could be delivered out of his hands, but he did according to his will, and he became great. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. The goat had a notable horn between his eyes. So again, what we're seeing here, again, is the 2 horns of the ram, again, the Medes and Persians. One horn was bigger than the other horn. The Persian Empire was much bigger than the Mede Empire, more powerful. So that's why you see the imbalance. But again, this ram, they had joined forces together. So that's what the ram was. And then, that a goat with one great big old horn between his eyes destroyed the ram, which destroyed the Medes and Persians. And history says Alexander the Great destroyed the Medes and Persians. So we know this is what it's talking about. Verse 7, I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and broke his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast down to the ground, and stamped on him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So this one mean goat, this goat was one tough goat. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. Again, Alexander the Great died, and his empire was divided up into 4 sections. Again, it's a repeat of all these other visions and stories. Verse 9, and out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land, which would have been Israel. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground. What did we read in Revelation chapter 12? Satan was cast to the earth, and so were 1/3 of the stars. The angels came down. They were cast down with him. This is what they're talking about. Verse 11, yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And the host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and cast down the truth to the ground. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint saying unto that certain saint which spoke, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall be the sanctuary be cleaned. So we're seeing the same vision here, same concept of all these different empires conquering another empire. But then you have a certain amount of time that's got to pass before the kingdom of our Lord and Savior, Messiah, comes and defeats them all. Is what it's talking about. And good luck if you want to try to figure out what the 2,200 days means. You can look on the internet and you will get dozens and dozens of suggestions and ideas what they mean. 2,200. People will break them down into the lunar years, some will break them down into the solar years and say this happened, that happened, that happened. I just finally gave up on it. None of them jumped out at me like, yeah, that's it. But I do know Messiah's kingdom will defeat this one. That I know. So you see all these things going to take place. Then you look over at verse 16. It says, I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which is called, and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. 17. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for the time of the end shall be the vision. Now as he was speaking with me, I was in deep sleep on my face toward the ground. But he touched me and set me upright, and said, behold, I will make you know what these shall be at the last end of the indignation. For the time appointed, the end shall be. So the angel is telling Daniel here, these are all last days stuff. These are all things that's going to happen in the last days. So it's really doesn't have anything to do with Babylon, Medes, and Persians, other than they just kind of set the wheel in motion to give something to talk about. But these are all things that's going to happen at the last. And like I said before, when Alexander the Great empire got divided up into 4 sections, and you look on a map, all the different 4 sections are divided into, today they're all Islamic empires. Every one of them is an Islamic empire. So why do people think it's Rome? Has something to do with Rome? There's nothing. I can't find one piece of evidence that even says has anything to do with Rome. I saw some scriptures people use. I go, well, that's a good case for me to say it's not Rome, but they will use it to say it is Rome. One of them is, and I'll be talking about it tonight, is that the people of the prince, the people that destroyed the temple, the prince that destroyed the temple, that people will return. It tells you in Daniel 9. So, well, that was Titus, the Roman general, destroyed the temple. So it has to be Rome. Really? Well, you're going to find out it wasn't any, the people that destroyed, because it says people. The people that destroyed the temple came from 4 different Roman legions, predominantly the 10th legion. And I'll talk about that tonight. Who was in the 10th legion? You're going to see that it had to do with all these empires of the beast who were in the 10th legion. Had nothing to do with Rome itself. So we'll be talking about that tonight. So it gets kind of interesting when you start breaking these all down. And so it's important that we talk about those. So we talked about 2, 7, and 8. So let's go to Revelation 17 briefly, and let's look at Revelation 17. We'll be hitting it again as we get there, but this is just so that we can continue this study with greater understanding. Verse 10 of Revelation 17. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. When he comes, he must continue for a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7. He is of the 7th, and goes into perdition. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings, which received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. And they will make war with the Lamb. 7 kings, 5 are fallen. We just talked about them all. And the one that is Rome. When John wrote the book of Revelation, that was the empire that is. So the one that says here that is Rome. And the other is not yet come. So if it is the Ottoman Empire, that empire has not come yet. With John, we know it's come. We understand it today. But John did not know anything about the Ottoman Empire yet. So then we also know that 7th head has to die. It will die. The 7th head will die. Then what does it mean by the 7th head will die? That empire will die. That's what it tells us. And the head comes alive again. So basically we know the 7th empire is the Ottoman Empire, the Muslim Empire. It comes alive again. And out of that Ottoman Empire was a little horn that will rise up. And that little horn is the Antichrist. The little horn is that fierce king that will come, and it will come out of that 7th head. So the Antichrist, the beast, whatever you want to call him, will come from the 7th head or the Ottoman Empire. He does not come from the Roman Empire. He's not going to be someone in charge of the European Union. He's not going to be somebody in charge of Rome. It's not going to be a pope. It's not going to be any of that stuff. He's going to come out of the 7th head area, which was the Ottoman Empire. So if you want to look and see where the beast of Revelation is going to come from, it's coming from anywhere that 7th head, the Ottoman Empire, controlled. More than likely, the book of Enoch says that the bad angels are coming back to the land of the Parthians. That's the eastern Turkey, Armenia, Georgia area, northern Iran. That's all part of the 7th head. So you can narrow it down a little bit of the Ottoman Empire, that the beast is coming out of that area. And he won't be a man. He'll be a fallen angel, because Enoch just said that the bad angels are going to come out back to the land of the Parthians. It's really interesting that Rome could never defeat the Parthians. Every time they tried to defeat the Parthians beat them back. So it's very interesting why Rome could not conquer the Parthians. But that's where the bad guy's coming from. That's why you got to pay close attention to what's going on in the world, because eventually the beast is going to arrive in that area, and things are going to be kind of crazy. All right, a couple more things. I want to talk about a little bit about some history here. That was some history, biblical history, but I want to talk about some regular history real quick here. When World War I ended, England defeated the Ottoman Empire. A lot of stories about that, but it's like when General Allan went to take Jerusalem back from the Ottomans, he created leaflets that said, "Drop your weapons and flee the city," signed General Allan. And a plane went over and dropped all the leaflets all over Jerusalem. The next day, the Ottomans were fleeing out of Jerusalem like crazy. So somebody asked the Ottomans, "Why did you guys give up so quick?" Because these leaflets fell from the sky, and it said, Allah said for us to leave immediately. We figured he was going to blow up the city or something. The name Allenby was so close in Arabic to Allah, they thought the leaflets came from Allah. And they all fled the city. And of course you guys are all familiar with Lawrence of Arabia. He was another famous person in the Ottoman Empire that helped destroy the Ottoman Empire. And things like this took place in that World War I that helped destroy the Ottoman Empire. But it's going to come back. We also learned that when Allenby crossed the wilderness all the Bedouins that were fighting with him said, "You can't cross that. Nobody can cross the wilderness and live. There's not enough water. There's not enough supplies of anything. You cannot do that." And Allan says, "Well, I'm going to do it." So all the Bedouins felt sorry for him, so all the Bedouin leaders gathered up as much water as they could, and they joined with him, and they marched across the wilderness. The same wilderness that the Hebrew children crossed. One of the most desolate places on the face of the earth. And Lawrence of Arabia made it all the way to the Red Sea, and the Ottomans did not expect him to show up, because his task was to blow up the cannons there at Eilat, so the British army can sail up the Red Sea and attack Israel from the Ottomans, get it from the Ottomans. So Alexander the Great came in, destroyed the Ottomans' cannons from behind, and everybody was like surprised. How did he ever cross the wilderness like that? And he did. Another great story about in World War I. So, anyway, when the war was over and England had won the war, the first president of Turkey, his name was Kemal Ataturk. And Kemal Ataturk declared the end of the Ottoman Empire in 1924. So once he established his government and things got settled, he declared the end of the Ottoman Empire. That was the head of the seventh beast just died at that point. So when he declared the Ottoman Empire dead, that was the head dying of the beast. So if that's when the head died of the beast in 1924, it says it's going to come alive. I love all these Hollywood movies and everything else showing a supernatural event of some guy called the Antichrist getting shot in the head, and then all of a sudden he comes alive again. Like, oh my gosh, he's alive. That's all about the Ottoman Empire. Had nothing to do about an individual, because the individual is a bad angel. You're not going to shoot him in the head. It tells you in the Bible, the beast, who can make war against him? You can't kill him anyway. It was about an empire. That's why when we started this class, I said you got to be able to distinctly separate the empire from the person. They're both called the beast. And so that's what happened in 1924. The Ottoman Empire died. But it's going to come back. As an empire, it's going to come back. The next president of Turkey, Bakr, made friends with Saudi Arabia, and he opposed the peace process of any kind of peace process with Israel, and he denounced Israel. So Kemal Ataturk seemed to like Israel, but the next one, Mr. Bakr, did not. After Bakr left, Erdogan, that's who is there today, came in, and he is an Islamic president. He created what he called the Developing Eight. That would be Egypt, Libya, Iran, Pakistan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Nigeria, and Turkey. He created this coalition of nations, which are all enemies of Israel. They're in Istanbul, which is very interesting, because one of the reasons why the Ottomans were able to destroy Constantinople, which is Istanbul, is because gunpowder had just been invented. They were beginning to develop cannons, and the Ottoman Empire used cannons to blow down the magnificent walls of Constantinople, because it was an incredible fortress. And the Ottomans were able to blow the walls down because of gunpowder and cannons. Gunpowder and cannons were just now coming on the scene at that time. It was invented in China, the gunpowder invented in China, and once it started coming out toward the Mideast and Europe, all these different countries and armies were capitalizing on it real fast, how to make cannons and bombs and rockets and everything else. So once you got a propellant like gunpowder, it didn't take very long for them to figure out how to use it in war, and they did. So that's why the Ottoman Empire was terrible is said there in those stories in Daniel, and fierce, because they came with gunpowder that was just coming on the scene, and cannons, and scaring everybody half to death. Some of those cannons made horrible noises, frightened the people. Not only were they powerful, but they were really loud, and it scared the people, scared the armies. And so that's the Ottoman Empire that did stuff like that. They were fierce. You guys ever heard of the Hagia Sophia? The Hagia Sophia was a Byzantine church, a beautiful Byzantine church in what was known as Constantinople today. It's called Istanbul. But the Hagia Sophia, which means Church of the Wise, during the time after the Byzantine Empire collapsed and the Ottomans took it over, they turned that church into a mosque. After the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1924, they opened that church back up as a museum, and people all over the world would come to look at that church as a museum piece. Well, now the Erdogan, this president of Turkey now, has converted it back to a mosque. The Hagia Sophia again now is a mosque. Anita and I both have been in that church, and the beautiful, beautiful church. It was really sad to see what they're doing to it. Most of the generals in Turkey like the secularism, and they oppose the religious encroachment. So Erdogan, being the president of Turkey, has to fight a lot of his generals because they don't like the idea that he's trying to turn it into a religious war state. They don't like that at all. Eventually Erdogan will probably win out on this thing. During the Iraq War, Turkey banned the United States from using its territory. It supported the Palestinians. Erdogan said, our minarets are our bayonets, and the domes, talking about the mosque, are our helmets, and the mosque are our barracks. So he was bragging about the mosque and the minarets, what they are. In 1974, Turkey invaded Cyprus and moved Muslims in and ordered the Greeks to move out. Greeks lived in Cyprus, but he invaded it and forced all the Cyprians and Christians, whatever, to move out, and the Muslims moved in. Then they burned the churches inside that island, or many of them converted to Islam. Now they still remain part of NATO and a friend of the United States, supposedly. However, the EU would not recognize Turkey as a member of the European Union because they had doubts about what Turkey would do and support them. The CIA put out a report that Turkey is in danger of collapsing, and a revival of the Ottoman Empire beast is coming. This was the CIA that said this. The Muslim Turks have slaughtered 2.8 million Christians. 2.8 million Christians the Muslims Turks have slaughtered. They also have the largest army in NATO, North American Treaty Organization. They're not a weak country. They're not a weak nation. So you can see if Turkey gets involved in an invasion of Israel, they're coming with a pretty big army. And lo and behold, Ezekiel says Turkey will be involved in that invasion. When we read things in Revelation about the beasts and stuff, and we're dealing with silver and iron and tin and lead, it tells us in Ezekiel 27:12 that Turkey was a major supplier of these minerals and metals. Josephus, the Jewish historian, said Tarshish is in Turkey. There's a lot of scriptures about Tarshish in the Bible. Kush, ancient Nubia, in northern Sudan, the Islamic takeover of that country killed 2 million Christians in the last 20 years. People have no idea how many Christian martyrs are being killed out there today. It's like Nigeria today. So all these people were killed in Sudan. So when it talks about, we're going to see in Revelation 16 when we get there, the kings of the east, 200 million man army. You know, the old Hal Lindsey group said, oh, well, that's Chinese. I'm saying, not. It's a Muslim invasion. If it isn't a Muslim invasion, then it's an invasion of wicked spiritual creatures that either came out of the bottomless pit or the fifth level of heaven where all those imprisoned angels came crashing to the earth with Satan. It's them. But it's not Chinese. You know, well, that's the only country in the world that can support an army that big. Well, first of all, that may or may not be true. Second of all, logistics of moving a 200 million man army across a big portion of the world, it just isn't going to happen. You couldn't get enough support to keep that going. It probably is either all those Muslim nations, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, all those countries, all coming together that used to be part of the Greek Empire, will come together and form one massive army with Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Armenia, Georgia, Libya, Northern Africa. All these countries will form a massive army that will come against Israel. It could be that. It'll be known as the kings of the East. But it won't be the Chinese. So we see a lot of these things get ready to come down the line. The 10th Legion, I did mention that earlier, Roman 10th Legion. They were made up of Syrians, Turks, Nabatean, Arabs. So basically it was a mixture of Syrians, Arabs, and Turks. The 10th Legion. The 10th Legion is the legion that destroyed the temple. So the people of that group that destroyed the temple, out of that group of people will come the Antichrist, is what Daniel 9 says. So out of the people of the 10th Legion that destroyed the temple, the beast of Revelation will come out of that group. Not Rome. He won't be Italian. He won't be German. He's coming out of whatever that 10th Legion group of people were made up of, which I just told you, Syrians, Arabs, Turks, Edomites. A mixture of all these people. That's why it's a mixture of iron and clay on the toes of the beast you saw. It's a mixture of a group of people is what it will be. Yeah. So that's how you're going to be able to identify. You can identify where the beast is coming from. I don't think it's going to do you any good because you're going to know when he shows up anyway. This guy is not going to sneak in. This guy is not going to come in and take over, very subtly. When he gets here, he's taking over right now, and you're going to know who he is. It's just that you're going to know now where he came from. when he's trying to get everybody to receive his mark, you can tell people, no, he's the bad guy. He came from this area. He came from that area. We see that in the scriptures. That's where the beast will come from. Do not take his mark. Do not take anything from him. Well, in Isaiah 14, verse 12, it talks about Lucifer. You know, they make movies about with the title Lucifer. You know, they even tried to make I don't know if you call it a comedy or whatever, or it was kind of make you feel sorry for Lucifer movie. Hollywood can do really stupid stuff. But anyway, this guy is called Lucifer. In Hebrew, it's called Halal bin Sahar. Halal means brightness, but in Aramaic, it means crescent moon. The same word. Well, that's interesting. So Lucifer is a symbol of the crescent moon. Well, that tells you who the bad guy is and who the bad guy supports. The crescent moon. Wow. The moon god. Islam believes in the moon god. They also say that the Muslims at a certain time of year, when Venus and the crescent moon are lined up a certain way, they go out to look at it. Happens on Ramadan. And they said on Ramadan, if that crescent moon and Venus line up together, that is a sign of the coming of their Messiah. So they will go out there all hours of the night and stare at that crescent moon until it sets with Venus in the sky, thinking this is the year that their Messiah is going to show up. Wow. Well, Ramadan just ended. As far as I can tell, the Muslim Messiah did not show up, which would be the beast of Revelation. So we're good for another year. He didn't show up. So all these things that we can learn, we know a little history here. Did you know the worship of the crescent moon came from Babylon? Even the Roman emperors worshiped the moon. It is a revival of the Babylonian religion. Did you know that in Islam their moon god is called Sin? S-I-N. That's interesting. That is called Sin. Yeah. The moon god also came from Ur of the Chaldees. That's where Abraham came from. It's interesting in Judges 8 verse 25 that Gideon won a battle against the Midianites, and all their camels and horses and everything else they left behind. He took all the jewelry that was on those animals off. You know what the jewelry was? Crescent moons. So when Gideon defeated those Midianite tribes, all their animals had crescent moons on them. So crescent moon is nothing new. Goes all the way back to the time of Abraham. And it represents Islam. In Islam it says that when their Messiah shows up, he will remove all their crosses. But instead the Messiah will come and remove all their crescent moons. That will take place. Wow. We'll have a lot more to talk about Babylon and Mecca and all that as we get into those chapters. But are you beginning to see a picture here of Islam in the last days? Does it sound like Rome to you? Does it sound like the Roman Empire to you? Babylon? And the Bible says there's 7 mountains. Well, it says that Babylon is built on 7 mountains. Rome is built on 7 hills. So it must be the bad guys got to come out of Rome. Well, in Revelation, the 7 mountains says are 7 kings that join up with the bad guy in the last days. They're not real hills. They're not real mountains. So you see some of these other prophecy writers just go to great extent to teach something that's not true. Yeah, so we'll talk more about that when we get into those subjects in Revelation. Wow. All the things it talks about, when we get to those, you're going to see that they all represent the Muslim Empire. So let's continue on to Revelation 13, beginning in verse 11. Revelation 13, verse 11. We left off in verse 10. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and it had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. Wow. So you have another beast rising up with 2 horns like a lamb. In other words, pretending to be maybe something innocent, but it's anything but innocent. It's tricking everybody. This is the false prophet. So verse 11 is about the false prophet. Verse 12, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Of course, that would have been Islam, the Ottoman Empire. Verse 13, he does great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. So we got fire coming down. It always seems to be a pretty typical sign, calling fire down from heaven. Verse 14, and deceived them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. So the beast died by a sword is what it's saying here. This is the Ottoman Empire. Did it die by a sword? It certainly did. World War I was a pretty good sized sword that was taking place. So the Ottoman Empire died by a sword. So this false prophet that's going to arrive is telling everybody they have to make an image to the beast. Understand this. A lot of people skip over this when they're teaching Revelation. They will make an image to the beast. This is idolatry. And if you don't make an image to the beast, you're going to be killed. So you're making an image to the beast. The false prophet will do this. Convince the world to make an image to the beast. So idolatry has not gone away. Matter of fact, it will come back in a very bad force. It'd be idolatry in worshiping the beast himself, that you'll make an image of it. Everywhere there'll be stores selling images to the beast, and you'll be required to go down and buy your own personal image of the beast and bow down before it. Maybe even hang it around your neck with a chain, so when the so-called police come by to make sure you have the mark, they'll see that you got the image. So be careful. I could just hear people today saying, oh, that's no big deal. I know it's not a real image. It's not a worshiping a false god. I'm just doing it to stay alive. Well, really? Well, then let's read verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. You have to worship the image of the beast. That's what it's saying. So you will have an idol or be required to get an idol, and then you have to bow before that idol that you're carrying around or whatever. So you will buy an idol to keep from losing your head, then somebody could come along and say, I want to see you bow down to that idol. Well, okay, so you'll set it down and bow down, and wrong thing to do. Very wrong thing to do. Verse 16, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive the mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell, save he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast. For it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. That number also means multitude. That has a multitude of men, and his multitude is 666. What does all that mean? Comes with in the Bible here, it comes with 3 Greek letters: the sigma, the Z, and Hi. I find it very interesting that the president of China is called Z. One of those numbers, the president of China is called Z. But anyway, that's the mark of the beast, 666. Now, according to other scholars, especially scholars of Islam, they see these 3 letters, they go, oh, that means in the name of Allah, jihad. In the name of Allah, jihad, which means war. In the name of Allah, war. So these people that know Islam are saying, oh, that's what that means. It's only us dumb Americans that don't see that. In the name of Allah, jihad. There's another tie right there that tells you Islam is going to rise up. When there's 1 billion Islamics out there, how much damage do you think they can do when the Muslim Messiah shows up on the scene? And the Muslim Messiah says, kill the infidels. Just ask the Armenians what happened to them when that call went out. They killed 1 million Armenians in Turkey and Armenia and Georgia area. When the main Islamic leader at that time said, kill the Armenians, and people that were just next door to Armenians and been good neighbors, and suddenly did what their leader says. And if they don't do what their leader says, they'll be worse than an infidel, as they're called. You will do everything the Mahdi says, that's their Messiah, or you'll be worse than an infidel. So they made all these announcements on all their loudspeakers on minarets and everything else. Kill the infidels. And the people may not have wanted to, but they felt compelled to get out and start killing anybody that wasn't Islamic. How do you think that would take place here in the United States? How many Islamic people we have in the United States? Several million Islamic people in the United States. What kind of damage you think they can do when they set out to just kill? A lot of damage. That's the dangers of Islam. I can see it now. Oh, you're just spreading hate. No, I'm spreading gospel. I'm spreading what the Bible says. I'm saying this is what you're going to do if you're Islamic. If you're not going to do that, then fine. Then you will have to become worse than an infidel according to Islamic teachings. But you will do that, because there ain't going to be very many that won't. Everything we've been talking about tonight points right back to Islam. Everything. Where it's located, the nation that's going to rise up, the mark of the beast, all these things point to Islam. Well, Rabbi, there have been other people with 666. Well, how did you figure that out? Did you just look to see if they had a first name with 6 letters, and a middle name with 6 letters, and a last name with 6 letters? There are people who say that the Prince of England is 666 because his name is 666. Wrong. That guy don't have enough wisdom and power to do anything. So it was funny how people will grab onto silly things like that. It says it's a number, it's a multitude. A multitude. It's talking about a horde, Islamic hordes is what it's talking about. Well, Hitler, he would have been one of them. No, well, how did you figure out Hitler was one of them? Just because his name Hitler had 6 letters in it, not all the other rest of his names did. And you look at these letters of the Greek alphabet, the sigma, which means 6, the Z, which means 60, is what they also call upside down name of Allah. The Z looks like a W. You lay it this way, it definitely is the letter for the name Allah. And I know that because when I was in Turkey in particular, I got where I could identify the name Allah wherever I went. Because I could see that vertical name of Allah. Then the high, which Islamics say symbolizes the 2 swords like this for jihad. If you've never seen that on their flags, that means jihad. And so that's all Islamic. So the very numbers alone is Islamic. We're not dealing with a revival of the old Roman Empire. That ain't happening at all. It's overwhelming evidence. Okay. Now let's go to chapter 14. I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion. And with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung as it were a new song before the throne, and before the 4 beasts, and the elders, and no man could learn that song, but the 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth. Now I mentioned this back in Revelation 7. I'm going to mention it again. This is not the same 144,000 that Revelation 7 talked about. Are you saying, Rabbi, there's 244,000? Rabbi is saying there's 244,000. Because what did it say in this one? They were redeemed from the earth in verse 3. In chapter 7, they were 12,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel. They were Israelis. Didn't say they were redeemed from the earth. And this group has the Father's name written in their foreheads. The other group just says they're sealed on their forehead. It's not the same. It's not the same words. So 144,000 is a symbolic number. It's a multiples of 12. 12 times 12, 144. What does the number 12 mean? Government. It means government. So you have two government groups. One's Democrat, one's Republican. No, I mean, yeah. Two government groups. One of them is for out of the tribes of Israel, a remnant that will be sealed to help run the nation of Israel. The other one is redeemed. Revelation says they are the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. These are those that have been redeemed from the earth. In other words, they have been raptured and they're with the Lamb. This group. It's not the same as the Revelation 7 group. This group is the first fruits with the Lamb of God. The other group is from the 12 tribes of Israel, that when they come out of their wilderness journey back at Mount Sinai and being protected by God, they will come back and be the government in Israel and maybe helping repopulate that state when they come back. But this group in chapter 14 are believers. Verse 4, these are they which were not defiled with women. I'm sure you ladies get upset about that phrase, that these guys were not defiled by women. Well, don't get upset, that's not what it's talking about. This group are virgins, is all it's saying. They're virgins. What did Paul say? I present you as a chaste virgin before my Father. Or Paul said that, but that's what he's saying. You're going to be presented as a chaste virgin, like you've never done anything wrong in your entire life, is what it's saying. These are they which follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. Now, we know we're not that good. But because of Yeshua, he's made us look good before the Father. He's the ultimate makeup artist. He makes us look good before the Father. Verse 5. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. Well, Lord, that's not true. There's guile in my words. I say things I'm ashamed of. I say, there is guile in my words. Remember what I've said before? If Yeshua presents you to the Father, you will be accepted. That's what we go through on Shavuot. We wave our baskets on Shavuot to be received by the Father. The baskets represent your works, your fruit, and your life. And you wave, the priest, it tells you in Leviticus, waves the basket before the temple at the altar to be accepted by God. And that's what Yeshua does. He presents us to the Father. And anyone Yeshua presents will be accepted by the Father. This is why it's so important, like Psalms 2 says, kiss the Son, lest he be angry. Kiss the Son. It's the Son we focus on. Kiss the Son. He's the one you want to make sure is happy. I don't understand when people say, we need to pay more attention to the Father and less about the Son. Are you out of your mind? You've seen the Son, you've seen the Father. That's what the Scripture says. You want to be in right standing with the Father? Then be in the right standing with the Son. You cannot bypass the Son. These come from people who think that they are more holy than now than other people because we're going right to the Father. Really, I want to go right to the Son, and everything right to the Son is what I want to do. Verse 6, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel, to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of water. What are we talking about here? We're talking about Matthew 24, verse 14. Matthew 24, verse 14. When Yeshua said, the end will not come until the gospel is preached unto the whole world. That's what he's saying. Till the gospel is preached unto the whole world. I bet you had no idea that this is where it happens. Right here in chapter 14 of Revelation. Verse 6. The end will not come until that angel with the everlasting gospel flies around the world, teaching the everlasting gospel, saying, Fear God, believe in him. Even Yeshua said the end will not come until the gospel is preached all around the world. It doesn't mean that we have to reach everybody on the earth before the end comes. We are to do that based off what Yeshua said. Go into the nations and teach the everlasting gospel from Samaria to the utmost parts of the world. He said that we need to do that. But that does not mean the end's not going to come till we do that. I think that's an awful lot of responsibility to be thrown on believers' shoulders. Saying that you have to preach the gospel in all the forbidden places before the end comes. Well, Lord, they'll kill me if I go over there. And as the way the population is growing, there's going to be more unbelievers than there are believers. I'll never catch up. Because you don't understand, it's the angel that's going to do it. This angel is going to do it. And the whole world will see this angel flying through the sky. Wow. Saying, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made the heaven, the earth, the sea, and the fountains of water. Wow. That's got to be quite a sight. God doesn't want people to perish. He's given them one more opportunity to believe. He's given them another chance. So probably people instead will pack their picnic baskets, go out somewhere and watch the spectacle in the sky. Oh, what's he talking about? What do you mean, fear God? Well, I believe in God. You know, what God? I don't know. What God do you think he's talking about, you know? Believe you me, when that angel starts that, then, like Yeshua said, then the end will come. So when that angel starts doing that thing, you better start practicing your rapture jumps. You may have already missed the rapture by that point. Because he's not going to try to deliver those already saved. The rapture will occur and they'll be gone probably already. He's going to make one more attempt to reach a few people on the earth, and most of them will just mock him instead of call out to him and be saved. So you can tell your family and your friends, when that occurs, you better fall on your face because you already may have missed it once this angel starts. Wow. Well, we're going to close it up right there, folks. We'll pick it up next week, same spot. We'll start with verse 8. How about Babylon is fallen? And we'll talk a lot about Babylon here. And it's not ancient Babylon. So, it's another Babylon. And we'll talk about that. Alrighty. Same place, same station, same bat channel, whatever, all those. We'll start again and we'll continue with Revelation next week. And so, a lot more to talk about, a lot more fun stuff to talk about, a lot of cool stuff, a lot of scary stuff. I mean, it's like Hollywood. I'll hit all the emotions. We'll get it all done. God bless everybody. We're gonna film this, aren't we? The questions, Q&As. No questions. How about you guys? You guys got any questions? We need a mic. Oh. No? You don't want us to record your voice? What? No? Well, I guess there's no questions, Greg. So we'll close up shop.